Hello students and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I am streaming to you live from beautiful Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a great weekend so far. This lesson and materials comes from aehelp.com for academic IELTS help. And for the general module, check us out at gieltshelp.com. I'll show you real quickly what those look like. This is our academic web portal here with over 100 hours of video lessons, 6 original practice exams, and a fully interactive course. Just need to click that big red button to get our pro version of the course, and if you want the pro version of our general IELTS, just click that red button there with the green background at gieltshelp.com. Hi Gurkarat, good to see you in class, one of our members. Now viewers, this is a members chat class. We do have an everyone chat class coming up in 90 minutes after this class. Hi Hung, where everybody will be able to join in. That will be a speaking part 3. If anybody has questions, you can email me at adrian@aehelp.com, ADRIAN, at aehelp.com. Hi Kesey, hi Preeti. Good to see more members joining in. If you want our exam books, you can find them on your Amazon bookstore. Just search for AE Helps Academic IELTS or GE Helps General IELTS. Now today, of course, this is Saturday. We don't have classes on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm calling this class a members Q&A. Q&A is the short form of saying questions and answers. And I know that a lot of students have questions and that for the IELTS exam and members too, and I can't always answer all of your questions. So I thought I would dedicate today's class to a question and answer session about the IELTS exam. Now, it's not going to be just completely random. We will structure this class to make sense. So we'll get into it, okay, one at a time here. Firstly, I'd like to help members and viewers with just some general questions that people have about the exam. So just some kind of questions, not specifically about the listening, reading, writing, that's okay too, but just kind of general questions about what is IELTS and so on. Hi Begzod, good to see you. So now, in this way, this class will give you lots of information about the IELTS exam, so you can mine my knowledge to get as many answers as possible. And also, it's kind of like a speaking or conversation class in some sense as well. Hi, Ferdovs. So, members, you can ask me questions in the beginning. I'd like to just talk about general questions about the exam, so an overview about the exam and questions that people have about it. So I'll give you a good example. For example, many students ask, how much time should I spend on studying IELTS to get a band 7? That's a very common question that I get in emails and different communications through Facebook, Twitter. I see this one all the time. So we're going to do Q&A. You can ask me questions. I will also ask some questions, ones that I know are very popular. So I'll throw this one out to you, members, and then I'll give you a chance to ask me some questions. So how much time should a person spend on studying IELTS to get a band 7? What is the answer to that? And Gurkarat, it will help you with your statement as well, where you're saying I only need 6 on each. Okay? So how much time does a person need? Begzod says 6 months. Okay. What's your opinion, Kisi, Rahul? Begzod says minimum 6 months. Well, first of all, a band 7 means a good user of English, right? Band 6 equals fluent user. Band 7 equals good user. Okay, just so you have an idea of what we're talking about this. Yeah, so Kisi says something very smart. So Kisi says, well, it basically depends on people's skills, right? So it depends on the skill level of a person in English and communication. So this isn't just questions and answers, but I'm going to also give you tips and strategies, okay? So here's my tip number 1. Very important tip. When you realize that you need to do the exam, so when you realize, oh, I need to do the IELTS because I have to apply for university or I want to apply for a visa, your first step, your very first step should be do a timed IELTS simulation for all sections. Get your writing and your speaking assessed. Okay? That should always be your first step. All right? So step number 1, when you know you need to do IELTS, hopefully you find out as early as possible, so not 1 week before you have to do it. That's pretty bad. Hopefully at least 4 or 5 months before you have to hand in your application, you know that you're going to need this exam score. So you sit down and you do a timed, okay, it has to be timed. So don't be like, oh, I'll just do the listening section today. I'll do the reading section tomorrow. And then, no. That's not going to give you a real score, okay? It's a very different situation than sitting for 3 hours doing an exam. So sit down, do the listening, do the reading, do the writing, and then check your mark, okay? For the listening and the reading, you can check the mark yourself, all right? I'll show you how you can do that. If you go to our website on the bottom here, many of you already know this is there, but on both of our websites, there is a score calculator. I think you can see that. So there's a score calculator there. Go to aehelp.com or glshelp.com, click on that score calculator, and I'll have to darken the screen here because the background will be quite bright. Just give me a second. So get this screen, and as some of you probably know, of course, the score is out of 40. So you can enter in your score, how many answers you got correct. Check the answer sheet, of course. So you got 32. So you got 32 correct in your listening. Hey, wow, you got 7.5. You don't need to worry too much, right? So check your score. Now for the writing and for the speaking, you're going to need a professional like me or another IELTS professional to grade your speaking or your writing. We can do that for you. So you can send us your speaking recorded or your writing, and we'll give you a score estimate. Okay? So your Salam is asking a question. Your Salam says, sir, I have a question. How many hours a day should we practice to get a band 7? Okay, so your Salam, when you do this first step, so when you do a timed simulation practice exam, and you know your scores, like let's just make up an example, okay? So you know that your listening is 6.5, your reading is 5, your writing is 5, and your speaking is 5.5. So let's just hypothetically say that you did a practice exam, you realized, okay, my listening is pretty good. I got 6.5, reading 5, writing 5, speaking 5.5. Now you can ask the question, what do I need to do? All right. So if you have these scores, so if you have this type of band score and your goal is to get that band 7, now I can answer your question. So now I can tell you how much time you need on average for a person to get that band 7. Okay? So now we know your baseline, and from this, we can calculate roughly what you need to invest. All right? So if you have these scores, you have to realize that, okay, reading and writing are my weakest. So I will have to invest a lot of time in reading and writing. Okay? Listening, not so much. Okay, I'll get away with that, investing less there. And speaking, obviously, a little bit more also. So if you have these scores, depends on what your schedule is. But from these scores, to move to a band 7, you need at least 4 to 5 months of intense English studies. This means a minimum of 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Okay, that's realistic. I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of IELTS students from different parts of the world, India, Russia, Korea, Brazil, you name it, from all continents and all countries. And there's definitely a wide range of abilities. Nevertheless, on average, I can say that if you have these scores and you need a 7, you need about 4 to 5 months of intense English studies. That means you have to wake up thinking, I'm learning English today. Hard 6 hours, that doesn't mean with a 1 hour break. That means at least 6 hours of concentrated study. Okay? And it matters how you learn. Okay? It does matter how you learn. Okay? So Gurkharat says, I also spent 1 month on Cambly. Hopefully, Gurkharat, that helped you. How you study is also very important, okay? So another quick tip here is 2 important points. So 2 points to getting band 7, let's say, if that's your goal, okay? How much time you study and how you study. Okay, so that means you have to study effectively. All right. Now, obviously, many of you who are watching, members and others who are watching, you're looking around for materials. You're trying to find effective materials on YouTube, hopefully in the physical world also, so courses and teachers, online learning aids. Okay, so again, it's not really just a push for our products, but on our websites, ahelp.com and gieltshelp.com, we've spent thousands of hours, not just me, but many professionals with psychology degrees, with education degrees, to develop materials focusing on students, on international students, and how international students from different cultural backgrounds learn. And we designed our materials to maximize the learning capabilities of students around the planet. Okay, as much as that can be generalized. So when we go to our website here and we go into our student account, and again, this is not just a sales pitch. I don't care if you, well, I do care if you use our materials or not, but I mean, you can use other companies' materials for sure. The key is to use good materials. Okay, another company that's not us, but obviously has some very good materials is Cambridge. Cambridge ESOL Examination Board creates the IELTS exams. So if you go to the Cambridge website, if you use Cambridge exam books, that's great. They sell their past papers. You get the same experience, exactly the equal level of difficulty. So they're great to use. Okay, use Cambridge as well. Make sure that the practice tests you're doing are very close to the same difficulty as the real exam. Our tests are. So here in our online course, we have a full, just give you a quick idea of this. And again, this is not a sales pitch. This is just emphasizing the idea that you have to learn from materials that really work. So here you see that our interactive materials are divided into these sections. First, we teach you some key strategies that you need to understand, like critical thinking, paraphrasing, for all parts of the test. Then we break it down into listening section lessons, reading section lessons, writing section lessons, speaking section lessons, and even a bonus writing and grammar lesson section, because we know many students are looking for that. When you go to, for example, the reading section and you open up one of these lessons, then you will notice we do something interesting in our classes, where basically we not only give you a lot of strategies that I'm just kind of bouncing through here, but when we give you the reading passage, we actually give you the audio. So you can read and listen to a native speaker, native British speaker, read the audio. Okay? That's because we know that if you're listening and reading at the same time, that helps you to learn more effectively. Okay, so to get a band 7, again, I don't want to go away from our Q&A session here, but to get a band 7, you really need to focus on how much time you study and how you study. Okay, all right. So, Rahul is saying a good question. So how many practice exams do you suggest we should take to get a band 7? So that's Rahul's question. That's a good question, Rahul. So how many exams should I do to get a band 7? That's a very good question, Rahul. I'm going to address that, okay? So, Rahul, the easy answer for you is do as many as possible, okay? But do at least one full-time practice exam each week. Okay, do at least one timed exam each week for 12 weeks leading up to your official test. And very importantly, Rahul, always score your exams and check why, not just where, but why you made mistakes. Okay? Feedback is very important. To improve. One of the big mistakes students make, Rahul, is they do a lot of practice exams. They score the exams. They go, okay, I got a 6 or a 5.5, and then they go to the next exam. But they don't check, what were my mistakes? Why did I make those mistakes? How can I avoid those mistakes in the future? That's very ineffective learning when people do that, okay? So it's extremely important, students, that you check your mistakes and you understand the source, the reason for your mistakes, okay? Preeti, I'm not sure what you mean by your text is not displaying. It is, I can see it. And I'm going to get to as many questions as I can. So Preeti says, how can I overcome grammar mistakes? That's a really good one, Preeti, because grammar mistakes cost a lot of points for many students. So Preeti is asking, I'm just going to use first initials, how can I overcome grammar mistakes? Okay, that just generally is a very good question. Preeti, the best way to overcome grammar mistakes is get feedback. So take note of your mistakes. Okay, always identify what are your common grammar mistakes. So for example, tense form or word form, wrong tense. Okay. And very importantly, to overcome grammar mistakes, Preeti, you should go back to grammar basics. Okay. So don't be shy or arrogant. Go back to grammar basics and build up from the start. Oftentimes, students, when they learn another language, they think, oh, I already speak and write so well in this language. I don't need to review the basics. I don't need to go back and learn about basic grammar structure like simple present tense. Of course, I know it's supposed to be subject, verb, object, right? And who cares? I'm just going to focus on the difficult grammar structures, the complex ones like passive voice with complex, okay? If it had been built a century ago, there would have been a lot of people who would have benefited from its resources. All right, so now I'm super fancy. Okay, that's not a good idea. So you want to go back to the basics and build up. And that's kind of why we included this bonus writing and grammar lesson section into our course. Again, I'll just darken up the screen a tad and show you what the idea is, because Preeti, that's exactly what would help you to improve your grammar. So if I click on that bonus writing course, and then here I have this navigation pane on the side. So I can go to the very beginning, click on that pane there, and here it basically shows me the simple sentence. So I'm just going to zoom in and jump to this. So here's an example in the course, Preeti, that would help you. So it says, look, okay, in English, the most simple sentence is subject, verb, object. John walks to school, okay? And then it explains further that there are different tools used in grammar to change the most basic sentences. Verb tenses, simple verb or continuous verb, active or passive, okay? So it builds your logic of how you think about grammar. So here, again, it reminds you that there are 3 verb forms in English. There's no future tense, okay? There's present, there's past participle, okay? And then it gives you some examples. And then, of course, it keeps going and keeps explaining what is what. So it says here is a simple present, here is a simple past, here's a simple future. It explains the structure. Now, a lot of you are probably going, okay, Adrian, I know that already. I know what's going on. But the logic here is to really go step by step, because eventually you get to a much, much more complex sentence structure. And by that time, you can accurately understand and use the grammar. Okay? So my tip, again, Preeti, for improving grammar and decreasing your grammar mistakes is simply go back to basics and build up from the basics, practicing examples for all the different forms. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, Bagzod is asking a really good question. So Preeti, is that okay so far? Does that make sense? Gurkharad, I think I answered one of your questions as well. Hopefully that makes sense. And now Bagzod is asking another question. Bagzod says, sir, what materials do you recommend to build our vocabulary bank? So Begzod is asking, what materials should I use to build my vocabulary bank? That's a really good question, Begzod. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So far, how is it, students? So far, are you following me? Am I spending too much time on answers? What's your feeling, members? Give me some feedback. Yeah, Preeti, of course, I tried to get to them as best as I can, okay, to each question. I think I got to for one of Ferdov's questions as well. Okay. Okay, Amrit seems to be enjoying it, which is good. All right, Ferdovs, thanks for that feedback. All right, good. Okay, so let's address, okay, Kisi, thank you. So let's address Begzod's question. So Begzod says, what materials should I use to build my vocabulary bank? That is an extremely good question. I think a lot of students are lost by that. There's a lot of material out there. I think there's a Cambridge vocabulary book for IELTS as well. It's just, I think it's okay. So the key here is use level appropriate materials. Okay. There are some websites, members and students, that can check roughly your vocabulary base. So there are some tests on Google. If you just Google test my vocabulary, I think it's called something like that. Just check it out. So if you Google this, test my vocabulary, there are some websites that can estimate how many words you know in a language. So it will tell you that you know roughly about 1,000 words in English or 2,000 words in English. And then based on that, you can find materials that are appropriate for your level. So when you're looking for vocabulary banks and materials, always look for level appropriate materials. So don't look for materials that are too easy, where you know a lot of the vocabulary, and don't look for materials that are too difficult, where there's so much new vocabulary that you don't understand what's going on, okay? Now, on our website, students and members, for those of you that maybe haven't seen this, if you go to our blog, which is at the top here, I'll show you this. So there's, because for vocabulary, I could spend a lot of time explaining this, and I think this will be very helpful. So notice that here you have on the website blog. So click on that blog. And then when you've clicked on the blog, then this first one here, IELTS vocabulary, you can see that come up. So it tells you a lot about vocabulary, and it gives you this academic word list that we looked at before in vocabulary lessons. So this blog explains the steps that you need to do for learning vocabulary. So go step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe I'll increase the size of the text here. And then we actually include 570 words that are very common to see on the IELTS. Have you seen this vocabulary blog, members, on our website? The 570 useful vocabulary for the IELTS exam blog? You've seen that one for Dobbs? Good. Okay. Hung says, yeah, I've seen it. Okay. Good. Okay, so many of you have. Fantastic. I know I used it in many other classes before. So that's definitely a good one to focus on. Now, besides this, so again, I'm not just simply trying to push our materials on you. I really want to give you quality answers. So use that. Aside from this, learning vocabulary is best done in context. Okay? So what do I mean by that? All right. It's a good question. What does Adrian mean? Learning vocabulary is best done in context. What I mean by that is when you know your level, you can find a book, a novel in English. Okay, doesn't matter if it's an e-novel on a Kindle or if it's a paperback. Find a book in English, of course, that you can read where you understand about 80% of the words. Okay? So, reading newspapers is okay too for DAWs, but sometimes reading newspapers can actually be very difficult for people. If the newspaper is your level for DAWs and you can mostly understand what you read, that's great. If it's confusing and you have very little idea of what you're reading, don't do it, okay? You can find a book in English that you can read where you can understand about 80% of the words. And there are books online. Let me try to show you this. I think Penguin Publishers has these books. So I'm just going to type in novels for English learners. Okay, and right away you can see that here we have these novels come up, even in picture on Google. Okay, let me darken that up a little bit. So you have these ones come up. Lord of the Flies, The Old Man and the Sea. These are very common. Animal Farm, Tuesdays with Maury. So these are some classic English novels that are in grade 12 high school. And if you check the back of these novels, okay, it will tell you how many words you should know to read it. So if you check the back of the book, it will say needs a vocabulary of 1,000 words. Needs a vocabulary between 500 and 800 words. Needs vocabulary between 2,000, 3,000 words. Okay? So it actually tells you what level of words that you need. Okay? Now, when you read these books, because these are classic books, read them. Don't worry about new words that you don't understand. Then watch the movie. Okay, most of these books exist as movies. I know that this one does. I know that this one does, and I would bet money that these also do. So I know this and this one do for sure. Okay. So that's a very good way to learn vocabulary in context. Okay, it's a much more effective way to learn. So find a book in English that you can read where you understand 80% of the words. Search for novels for English learners. Okay, that's what you're Googling. Novels for English learners. And then when you find a couple that interest you, make sure to check the required vocabulary base. Okay. On the back, if you're in a bookstore, in the description. If you're going online. Okay, for example, 1,000, it'll show you something like 1,000 to 1,500 words required. Okay, if you think you have that many words in English, that's a good book for you. Read the book, then watch the movie. And if you're super savvy and a hard learner, you might read the book again. That's a very effective way, Begzod, to pick up new vocabulary. Does that make sense? It's very quick and it can be enjoyable. Okay. That's what I would do. So I wouldn't just, I think a lot of students, they try to just focus on individual words and they try to build these individual word lists. It's okay, but it's a fairly ineffective method of learning vocabulary. Okay. Gurkarat, I see you had to go, I think. If you're still here, goodbye. If not, goodbye. All right. What other questions? Okay. Okay, Rahul is asking a really good question too. Cambridge or IDP makes any difference in marking? Some questions for paper-based or computer-based exam. That's a really good question too, Rahul. So, yeah, so a lot of students ask this question. Should I do British Council, IDP, or sorry, British Council Cambridge, or IDP? Should I do computer-based or paper-based IELTS? Yeah, that's a good question, Rahul. Very common. First of all, not much difference. Girls and guys, ladies and gents, British Council, Cambridge, IDP, they all work together. They are different departments, but they set the same standards. They have to, okay? The only difference is general version or academic version. So IDP is the Australian International Testing Department, okay? Cambridge, of course, is in the UK. They're connected with British Council for the distribution of the IELTS exam. All three of these institutes govern the IELTS exam. So IDP, British Council, and Cambridge all work together through the EASL Examination Board to create the IELTS exam and to serve the IELTS exam, administer it, market to students worldwide. So the difficulty of the exam is always the same. Okay, the British Council exam is just as difficult as the IDP, vice versa. Sometimes there are little differences in the test centers, so you might find that one test center is nicer, has better, newer equipment than another test center. That's just luck. Okay, there's no, I mean, you can go in advance and check the audio equipment and the seating and the tables, but that's just luck. So there's no guarantee that the IDP will have a better test center than British Council or vice versa. It's totally chance. Should you do the computer-based or the paper-based? Easy answer for that one. If you are more comfortable writing by hand, do the paper-based. If you are more comfortable typing and you can see the screen while you type, so you can touch type looking at the screen, not your fingers and not pecking, which means finger typing, then do the computer-based, okay, if you feel comfortable with computers. The speaking part of the exam is the same for computer and for paper-based. So, all right. All right, Danish, Raza, welcome into the chat. So Danish says, sir, I got 6.5 band overall. I got 5.5 in writing. How can I get 6.5 in writing? I'm only getting a band score of 5.5. Yeah, that's a really good question too. A lot of students have that difficulty going from 5.5 to a 6.5 Danish. So very common question. Okay, so next question by Danish. Danish says, how can I go from a 5.5 to a 6.5 in my writing? Okay, I'll give you a couple answers for that. Answer number one is improve the structure of your essay and do not just write a simple template answer. For example, there are many benefits to riding a bicycle to work instead of driving a car. This essay will discuss a couple of the benefits of riding a bike. Okay, so Danish, I'm not saying this is your introduction, but a lot of 5.5 essays have this kind of introductory paragraph where it says there are many benefits to. So the question is, some people believe that riding a bike to work is better than driving a car. Explain whether you agree or disagree. Support your ideas with your own knowledge. So then many students start to write this. There are many benefits to riding a bicycle to work instead of driving a car. This essay will discuss a couple of the benefits of riding a bike, and then they continue with their body paragraph 1 by saying, firstly, a bike does not pollute the environment. Okay. So this type of essay usually will get a 5.5. It's unoriginal. It's not high school level or college level writing. Okay. So very, very difficult with this kind of an essay to get a 6.5. To get a 6.5 with this type of an essay, you basically have to write a perfect essay with no grammatical mistakes, no spelling mistakes. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll get a 6.5. But no examiner will give you a 7.5 or an 8 for this kind of an essay because that's a very good user of English, getting close to an expert user. And a very good or an expert user of English does not write essays like this. Okay? They write essays with much clearer introductions, with thesis statements that outline directly the points of the essay. They use information for cohesion, not just simple words like firstly. So the first advice that I can give you, Danish, is make sure to follow a true essay structure of high quality, high school, college level writing. Okay? No, it's not, Danish. So if you got 5.5 in IDP and 7 days later you did it at British Council and got 6.5, it could just be that you felt more comfortable with the exam. It could be that you were more familiar with some of the topics. It could be that there was a little bit of luck in the grading, but ideally the exam was the same difficulty in IDP and British Council. I've seen the exact opposite, Danish. I've seen people say, I went to British Council, I got 5.5, 10 days later I went to IDP and I got 6.5. So there isn't any consistent proof that there's a difference between IDP and British Council. All right. Sometimes just because people do the exam a second time, they feel more confident and they do better. All right. Okay. So to go back to your previous question, Danish, the answer is improve the structure of your essay and do not just write simple template answers. Okay. And the other way to get a 6.5 is make sure to specifically answer the question and not just write general ideas about the topic. Okay, so be original, have good structure, and write specifically. All right, so I think Kesey had a question way back here somewhere. Kesey, I'm going to look it up. Are you still here, Kesey? Are you still watching? Okay, so Kesey asked a good question. Yeah, I caught that out of the corner of my eye, Kesey. So Kesey says, when I was speaking, I needed to think about grammar rules that made my brain busy and my speaking not as smooth as it should be. Should I recite some articles regularly? Like, should you just basically like reciting poetry? I don't know, Kesey. I don't think that will help. Don't overthink grammar when you're speaking. So just speak what you know. If you feel that you've made a mistake, correct yourself, okay, in real time. It's okay to do a little bit of reciting, but rote memory, Kisi, is never the best approach to learning. I know that's very popular in China, but it's just not. It's not very effective for these kinds of situations where you don't know what the questions are going to be. So Kisi's question is. It's a two-part question, Kisi. I'm going to turn it into a question. Is it good to think about grammar while I'm speaking? So that's your first question. And your second question is it effective learning to recite articles to improve speaking? Okay, a little bit tricky questions, but they're good ones, Kisi. So you shouldn't think about grammar while you're speaking. You should just speak, okay, during the exam. When you're practicing at home, definitely. All right, so that's my quick and simple answer for that one. Is it effective to learn by reciting articles to improve speaking? This is not very effective, but it is useful to mimic actors, actresses in movies. Okay, so it's a little bit different than just reciting. Watch a movie with subtitles and try to copy the speakers. Okay, try to copy what they're saying. All right. Does that make sense, Kisi? So instead of just reading an article and trying to recite it and memorize it, watch a movie instead. Watch it with subtitles and just try to copy, try to mimic what the actor or the actress is saying exactly the same way. Watch the subtitles. Speaking isn't always grammatically correct, and natural speaking is often very different from the way that we write, Kisi. Okay? All right. Preeti says, sometimes my reading fluctuates. Sometimes I get 7.5, sometimes I get 6.5. Yeah, Preeti, that's normal. Just keep practicing and it will go up. So improvement when you're looking at your your reading and your writing, it kind of works like this. And then you slowly bounce upwards, okay? So it's not a straight trajectory. When we're learning a language, the improvement is not this straight upward line, but rather it kind of bounces like this, okay? But the idea is that you're always improving. So don't worry too much about it, Preeti. In maybe 2 months or 3 months, suddenly you'll realize that you're getting sometimes an 8, sometimes a 7. Then in another year, you realize you're getting sometimes a 9, sometimes an 8. But the idea is that you're overall improving, okay? All right, members, that's it. I'm going to stop us there for today. Hopefully, I know we just got to the general questions. I'm actually quite surprised we didn't even get into sections like listening or reading section questions specifically. Before I close this class or wrap up this class, I want to ask, was this helpful? Did you find that this kind of class is useful? And would you like to see one of our members' chat classes be this kind of class in the week, this kind of Q&A session where you can pick my mind and you can pick each other's minds and get some feedback on maybe what works, what doesn't, where you should look for information. So what is your feeling? Give me some feedback. What is your feeling on this type of a class for just once a week? So Danish, you found it helpful. Hung says, okay, maybe once a month. Okay, so maybe once a week is a little bit too much, one out of every 3 classes. Okay, maybe Hung, what I can do is find a kind of a happy middle ground. It seems like So yeah, for Dobbs, you read my mind. I was just about to say that once every 2 weeks, and Begzod says the same, maybe once every 2 weeks. Okay, that sounds great. That's good feedback. Thank you for that. So what I'll probably do going into the future is once every 2 weeks, so every second Saturday, we'll do a Q&A session, and we'll try to focus on different parts of the IELTS exam. Okay, and that way we can help each other to improve and find some quality resources for learning. Okay, students, that's it for today. Thank you so much, members. Thank you so much, viewers. We will have another class in half an hour, so in 30 minutes, we will have a speaking part 3, practice and strategy, same channel, in 30 minutes. Bye for now.